Hello, my name is Camille Bird O'Quinn. I'm a speech-language pathologist and doctoral student in special education. I am passionate about the assessment and instruction of African American students who speak African American vernacular English and its connection to disproportionality in special education. Today we'll gain a better understanding of African American vernacular English, or AAVE. We'll examine teacher and pre-service teacher attitudes about the use of AAVE by students, teacher and pre-service teacher preparedness to teach students who speak AAVE, and ways to better prepare teachers to teach students who speak AAVE. First, let's talk about what is AAVE. AAVE is a dialect of American Vernacular English. It has influences from West African languages, General Southern American Vernacular English, and English-based Creoles. It's a linguistic system that has an established lexical, phonological, syntactic, morphological, and pragmatic set of features. It is a marker of identity and a symbol of racial unity. However, not all African Americans speak AAVE, and not all AAVE speakers are African American. Nevertheless, AAVE is a rule-based linguistic system, and it is characterized as a legitimate form of communication. So what exactly do I mean by AAVE is a rule-governed linguistic system characterized by its own set of lexical, phonological, syntactic, morphological, and pragmatic features? Well, let's take a look. Let's take the verb be, for example. This is my favorite aspect of AAVE to talk about because those who do not speak AAVE may perceive our use of the to be verb as random or arbitrary, but it's not. There are rules. For example, in AAVE, the insertion of be in a phrase marks the recurrence of an event, meaning all the time. So in AAVE, we might say, they be waking up too early, or those shoes be too expensive, or that's the way they be actin', to mean they wake up too early all the time. Those shoes are too expensive all the time. Or that's the way they act all the time. That would be the translation in the mainstream dialect. Another example of this is in the use of the verb been. In AAVE, using been in a sentence marks initiation of an event, as in for a long time. So, they've been waking up too early, or those shoes been too expensive, and that's the way they been acting, would be translated in the mainstream dialect as they have been waking up too early for a long time. Those shoes have been too expensive for a long time, and that's the way they've been acting for a long time. Let's do one more. In AAVE, the omission of the to be verb marks a single occurrence of an event, as in right now. So the sentence is, they waking up too early, those shoes too expensive, and that's the way they actin', would translate in the mainstream dialect as, they are waking up right now, but it's too early. Those shoes right there are too expensive, and that's the way they are acting right now. So an answer to the question of what is AAVE is a dialect of American English with its own set of syntactical rules and morphological meanings and a host of other components. As a speech-language pathologist, I provide therapeutic services to people who have a disorder or a breakdown in communication that is sufficient enough to negatively influence the effective use of messages in the language used by the speaker. So that means AAVE is not a disorder. People who speak AAVE are fully capable of communicating with others who speak AAVE, and usually with those who speak the mainstream dialect as well. Now, with that said, there are regional, social, and cultural variations of the communication system of AAVE, which are by and large related to a person's individual linguistic background. For example, in the top right-hand corner, you see a picture of my dear grandfather. That's him pictured when he served in the Korean War. He was from Alabama, and I'm from Chicago, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I didn't understand a word he was saying until I was almost 5 years old. Sure, he was speaking English, but it was a form of AAVE that was so different from the one I spoke that I had to rely on my own family to translate for years. So yeah, AAVE can be a little different from region to region based on the linguistic background of the people who speak it, but it is never a disorder. As long as the form of communication is effectively used by the speaker to other listeners, then it is a dialectal difference. AAVE is not a disorder, it's a dialect. We make a big deal out of AAVE being a dialect, but dialects are nothing new. We all speak one. What we hear most in mainstream television is the mainstream dialect, which is what I'm speaking right now. But that too is just another dialect. One is not better or somehow greater than another one. In Texas or down south, most people say y'all to refer to a group of people. But here in Chicago, we say you guys. Those are just examples of dialectal differences. Neither is right or wrong. They're just different. They're dialectal differences. Do you know how many dialects there are in American English? How many do you think you can name? Go ahead. I'll give you a second. Go ahead. Give it a try. Well, honestly, no one actually knows for sure how many dialects of American English there are, but the going number right now is 28. A gentleman by the name of Robert Delaney once tried to map out all of the different dialects in America, and he came up with the map pictured here on your screen. Now notice, though, that AAVE isn't even listed on here. Well, that's because AAVE intertwines and embeds characteristics of the dialect features of the regions listed here within its own rule system that are already a part of AAVE as well. So it's kind of like what I was talking about with my grandfather, since he came from a different part of the country, which has a dialect of its own. And then with AAVE features superseded on top of those differences, oftentimes it led me to having difficulty understanding what he was saying at all. But those who were able to speak my form of AAVE and his form of AAVE, or the mainstream dialect, which my grandfather was not able to do, they were able to help translate for me. A curious process indeed, considering it was all just another form of American English. So why is all this so important to me? And what does any of this have to do with disproportionality in special education? Well, I'll tell you. It's important because teachers perceive AAVE to be an inadequate language system, and they perceive that students who speak AAVE to have a communication disorder. They feel that AAVE speakers are likely to have problems with reading and writing, standardized achievement tests, and that it will interfere with learning. It's true, Gupta did a study in 2010 surveying teachers on their beliefs about AAVE speakers, and those were the results. In fact, most even admitted to having lower expectations of AAVE speakers compared to those who spoke the mainstream dialect. In 2013, Newkirk, Turner, Williams, Harris, and McDaniels repeated Gupta's study with pre-service teachers to see if their attitudes towards AAVE speakers were different, but they weren't. Pre-service teachers were also found to perceive AAVE as an inadequate language system. They perceived that students who spoke AAVE had a communication problem, and that they were likely to have problems with reading and writing, standardized achievement tests, and that it would interfere with learning. And again, most even admitted to having lower expectations of AAVE speakers compared to those who spoke the mainstream dialect. Can I just add that what's especially fascinating to me about those pre-service teachers surveyed in 2013 is that the majority of them were Black or African American. A total of 31 pre-service teachers completed the demographic portion of the survey, and 28 of them were Black or African American. I find it fascinating that this suggests that there just might be more than cultural mismatch at work here and the negative perceptions of AAVE and the students who speak it. So why does teacher perception of AAVE matter? Well, it matters because a study by Whitehagen in 2012 found that perception of a student is the most important contributing factor to determining whether the student fulfills his or her academic potential, regardless of the student's behaviors and attitudes. And with there being a disproportionately higher number of Black and Hispanic students being identified as having subjective-based disabilities and high incidence, such as learning disability, emotional disorder, and speech-language impairment, teachers' negative perception may be playing a role in the minimal student success we see among students of color, as well as the over-referral and over-diagnosis of students in special education. This leads to the question, are teachers prepared to teach students who speak AAVE? Well, in 2010, Gupta found that there was a necessity to train teachers on the linguistic needs of students who speak AAVE, and that teachers had not acquired teaching strategies of their own to address AAVE speakers' needs. Even though teachers reported being familiar with the linguistic features of AAVE and comfortable teaching students who spoke the dialect. In 2013, in Newkirk-Turner's study, along with her colleagues, it was found that more than two-thirds of the pre-service teachers reported that their teacher preparation did prepare them to work with children who speak AAVE. However, close to three-fourths of both teachers and pre-service teachers indicated a desire to learn more strategies to address the needs of children who speak AAVE. So, what are ways teacher prep programs can better prepare educators to teach students who speak AAVE? Well, that's the burning question on many educators' lips, mine included. Well, Dr. Donna Ford is a leader in the field of disproportionality in special education, and she points to incorporating a culturally responsive classroom that is student-centered and culture-centered. In 2010, Dr. Ford highlighted that for curriculum to be truly student and culture-centered, it must include the development, needs, interests, culture, characteristics, and learning styles of the students. And not just in instruction, but in the learning environment, assessment, curriculum, and overall philosophy as well. I have had the privilege to work with Dr. Ford, advocating for quality education for AAVE speakers and other students of color in CEC's Division for Culturally Linguistically Diverse Learners. That is me, pictured in the top left corner in turquoise, and that is Dr. Ford, pictured to my immediate left. In addition to creating culturally responsive classrooms, Beneke and Cheatham urged in 2015 that in order to promote equity and inclusiveness in early childhood settings amongst AAVE speakers, we must examine linguistic identity and potential biases, investigate linguistic diversity, partner with families in learning about diversity in dialect, and explicitly teach AAVE speakers the mainstream dialect through code switching. Now, to code switch or not to code switch? That is the question. There continues to be discussion as to whether or not this strategy should be supported to encourage AAVE speakers to be bidialectal. Yep, that's a word. But I'll let you know in on a little secret. I am in full support of this. Code switching is when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or language varieties within a particular context. Many believe, as I do, that teaching code switching may prove beneficial in this conversation of supporting AAVE speakers at school. I code switch between AAVE and the mainstream dialect all the time, throughout the day, oftentimes without even knowing it or even thinking about it. I learned that from my parents. There they are, pictured on the far right of your screen. They taught me how to code switch. They didn't know they were teaching me to code switch, but that's exactly what they were doing in the way that they raised me. Both of my parents have master's degrees in education. They both speak AAVE at home and the mainstream dialect when we're out at work or church or other community events. We also use the mainstream dialect at home. We just sort of use both all the time, depending on what we were talking about, where we were, and who we were with. That's exactly what code switching is. Now, whether or not code switching might prove beneficial to African American students who speak AAVE in supporting academic language and literacy success at school, and ultimately all of academics, well, that is still up for debate. But I agree with Beneke and Cheatham in saying yes. But again, more research is needed on this important topic, to be sure. And while perhaps you will be the one to help further the conversation in your own research contributions, I know that I will. Let me leave you with this. This poem beautifully captures the bias experienced against AAVE speakers and why it's so important to break through that bias so that we can provide quality education to all students in all communities without prejudice. This is written by Joshua T. Dickerson. He's a poet, speaker, author, and activist. It's called "'Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil." 'Cause I ain't got a pencil. I woke myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket 'cause ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark 'cause the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready 'cause my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then, when I got to class, the teacher fussed 'cause I ain't got a pencil. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Camille Bird O'Quinn. See you next time.